Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another segment of the Royal Nugget. And I am Sharon, your retirement coach diva, and I am so excited. Well, I say that every episode because
Mhm.
every episode has a wonderful guest, and tonight is no exception. Today we have with us Erica L. Davis of Excel Consulting, and she is a phenomenal woman. Yes, she is phenomenal. And she has her own business, she has her podcast. She is just doing so many great and wonderful things. And so I'm not going to belabor and just talk all about her. I'm going to give her this opportunity to share about herself and all that she does. So, welcome, Erica. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm so glad, appreciative of you sharing your platform with me today.
Oh, listen, I so enjoyed the time that I was on your platform. And I know that based on that and other conversations we had, we're just going to have a great time
Oh yeah,
during
I'm
this
always here for
particular.
a fun time, not a long time for sure.
Yes. And so last time I talked to you a few weeks ago, you were saying it was kind of cold down there in Florida.
Yes, it was really chilly. I think I lost a couple plants with all these shenanigans the
Oh,
weather is engaging in. But we'll see. You got to give it time. Sometimes it looks like it's not going to make it and it needs a little bit of time to rejuvenate. So we'll see. Some of them may make it. Yet still my hibiscus been hanging on for a couple years.
well, I have had. I'm gonna say I don't know. I don't have a green thumb. They say a green thumb, but my goal this year is to start growing some plants. I did good during the summertime. I
Mhm.
had got a peace lily as a
Yeah.
gift, and somebody told me all you gotta do is water it once a week. Well,
Mhm.
my watering and what real watering for the plant was
Mm.
totally different. And
Well,
so I
Mich
took this little app and said that I had
mhm.
was drowning my plant. And then
Oh,
it
rude.
told me to it told me put aspirin. It told me put aspirin in the water. And so
Mhm.
I did that and then
Mhm.
it just died. It just, so
Well,
I was
the thing
like,
that I'm learning, because I usually have a small cemetery as decoration around my house as well that were plants that have expired.
mm,
And I wish I had put it in the shot, is that I got a orchid, which is like super hard to grow. And mine is like reblooming for the first time. I've had it for 2 years. And I was like, it looked like it wasn't doing anything, but then it did. And so, I guess the lesson there is like sometimes less is more. And the same thing is with leadership. Sometimes you don't need to be doing all the things. You need to share the space, hold the space, extend invitations. And I think plants are teaching us that. Like they all need something different. They don't need the same lighting, they don't need the same temperature. One of them was going bad, and I was like, it must be catching a draft from the front door. Let me move it. Where all summer it was fine there, but when
mm-hmm.
that cold streak hit, it was having troubles surviving and
Right.
thriving.
Right. That's something brand new down there for the plant. So
Yeah.
you have to just kind of adjust. And even with me, like I said, I am going to make it a point this year to make sure I get better with growing plants and things, and not always the traditional way. But
Yeah.
we already started all over the place. So first of all, I would like you to share with our audience about you. Tell us about Erica Davis and where she's from and how she got to where she is now.
So my name is Erica Latifa Davis. Erica means great ruler. Latifa means gentle and pleasant. I always say, my mama tried. Right. So I grew up in Michigan. Anybody that is from Michigan, you got to say I'm from around here. Grew up in Michigan. Am the granddaughter of the first Black bus driver at University of Michigan, and the first Black chef at the Pretzel Bell, and just a come from a legacy of community activators and I want to say healers, like healing food is medicine, right?
Mhm.
And so just a long line of healers and activators and people of service. And so I definitely have core values of authenticity, service, and connectedness. And that shows up in my work. I trained as an architectural engineer, and that was me finding how to put pieces together and learning about systems work. Now I'm a certified Clifton Strengths coach as well as trained in ORSC. And so I really mash those up to talk about how we do the things that we naturally do, how we make those consistent and productive and live sustainable lives, right? Because we grew up in that hustle culture, right? We was latchkey kids at
Yeah.
first, second grade, kindergarten,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that developed a sense of determination
Mm-hmm.
and stamina, and oftentimes it has served us. We're learning now from these newfangled kids, right, that there's something else available. Our parents were probably the last generation where you worked one job forever and then
Mm-hmm.
retired and they took care of
Mm-hmm.
you. And as our culture is going through a reboot, is what I like to call it, we get a chance to change the status quo. And so how do we do that? We take stories and we take data, right?
Mm-hmm.
And put them together and create systems that are sustainable for the system, not and individual members in the system. And so really have had a really great time learning. My top 5 are learner, connectedness, achiever, input, and woo. And when I first saw woo, I was like, what does woo mean? Well, it means winning others over. So it really
Mm-hmm.
does. I have naturally leveraged my gifts, my top 5, my top 10 strengths to build bridges literally and figuratively in organizations and in communities and families.
Wow, wow, that is great. So, a lot of our listeners, or maybe not a lot, but some of them may not really know what Clifton Strengths
Mhm.
Finders is. Could you give us a little bit of background about that?
So Clifton Strengths came up in the 80s after, lots and lots of research developed by Don Clifton. And the idea behind it was researching and looking at what do people do best. And so one of the things I like to describe about our strengths is like there's things that are in our tool belt, there are things that are in our toolbox, there's things in our tool shed, and there's stuff we got to go to Lowe's to get, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not naturally gifted in that. And so instead of always us trying to assimilate or what's the word I want to use? Just round peg, square hole, fit somewhere, right? Fit in. That's the word.
Right.
That's what I want to use. Instead of us trying to fit in, we really have found this. The research has found that if you are doing the things that you do well, even better, like there's like almost an 800% increase in productivity and improved outcomes versus like, oh, everybody's got to be well-rounded. Some people are supposed to be a little pointy. Some
Mm-hmm.
people are supposed to have a little octagon going on.
Right.
When we make space for those things,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it improves workplace morale, it improves performance, it improves retention, which is a thing that, we're all talking about as companies are downsizing and work is shifting in how it shows up. And so, how do we stay at the top of our game? It's not by competing with anybody else. It's always, hey, how can I be my best self? And if this is what you're looking for, then I'm your person. And if not, I wish you success and luck. And it's not like, oh, they didn't want me. No, I wasn't a good fit. And I'm okay with that.
Mm, definitely, definitely. So, share with us how you work with your clients to get them the best results based on what you do.
I would say 95 to 97% of my clients change their job, quit their job, or get a promotion within 6 months to a year after we work together. And part of that is we right size and align our values and our actions, right? So you can't say, oh, I value autonomy, and you step all over other people's, right? Because it's not just how we show up in our individual values, it's also about how we engage with the system of organizations, our teams, or even our families. And so some of those outcomes are, like I said, 95 to 97% change jobs. They experience more satisfaction. They get the things done that have been on their wish list for so long. They're able to look in the mirror and realize how they can overcome their blind spots and be more productive in the way that feels good to them, right? It doesn't feel good when you got it. I remember early in my career, I had a to-do list. And then if I didn't finish everything, I would cross it off and put the next part of the step on there. And it just was long, long, long. Now I'm down to like a sticky note and 3 things I get a lot of
Mm,
things done, but the priority, everything can't be a priority because then
right.
nothing is. So I'm like, sticky note, 3 things. I'm going to get this done this week. And I have always been a mighty, mighty productive woman.
I feel you stepping on my toes about talking about how used to write a list, and then it's like, oh, I didn't get it done today. Let me move it to the next day. I am
Right.
famous for doing that. I'm famous for doing that.
We all do because in our culture, our society, in American society, we talk about what do you do as the value of our worth, and it's not, if you
Mhm.
have a bad credit score, then you bad. No, I'm not bad. My credit is bad. I'm still
Right,
100, right? So
right.
how do we differentiate, disconnect from the value that society tells us we have and really embrace our true value, our true, full self-authority and full self-acceptance?
So, how do you work with your clients to help them determine what their values are?
I like to use a website. I can't even think of the name of it right now because, of course, you asked me, right? But for me, it's not just identifying what the values are. It's also adding a definition to it, right? Because
Mhm,
when I came up with authenticity, like it could mean, right, a
mhm.
knockoff, authentic knockoff, and I was like, ooh. And I was teaching a team building session, and the guy was like, "Shouldn't you call it?" It was called authenticity in the workplace. And the guy was like, "Shouldn't it be genuineness?" I said, "Well, if you would like to name it that when you teach it, you can." For me, authenticity just really resonates with me in my heart center. And so, working with my clients, we develop definitions, and you look at all, there's like 50 at this website, and then from there we whittle them down to 15 to 10 to 5, and then we really focus on 3 that really you find the through thread um, throughout your life, and what does that mean, and how does your understanding of those things continue to evolve? How do you make
Yeah.
commitments to yourself based on your values, based
Mhm.
on your natural talents? How do you honor yourself in a system that requires us all to be self-actualized individuals to be productive? And I'm not talking about the
Yes,
system,
yes.
I'm talking about a system.
Yes, that is true because our values are usually from our core things that we were taught to us, or things, based on experiences that we've had that
Mhm,
shape our values and how they play out in our lives. So I love
mhm.
that what you said. But something that also came to mind is when you talked about authenticity. We had an I had an episode on another podcast where we talked about that, and our guest talked about the different, I'm gonna say, levels to authenticity. There's like the free version, and then there's the paid version, and depending on
Mm.
the different environments that you may in, or the level of the relationship, depends on the type of version that you may receive, because you may not feel to be as transparent or authentic in, let's say, the workspace versus being like with family or friends,
Well,
so.
and, Leadership Circle Profile talks about courageous authenticity, and,
Mhm.
that's part of being, a transformative leader. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean you're the same all the time because some people call me Erica, some people call me E, some people call me mommy, some people call me auntie, favorite auntie Erica, and they get $5 for it, right? And so we have this myth that I should show up every day the same. That's not what reality is.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I think it's a really great opportunity to think about, what does authenticity mean? Is it an expression of our soul's desire as well as a reflection of what we see in society around us that resonates with our evolution?
Now, do you find that the leaders that you work with have hesitation, I'll say, on being authentic in the workspace? And I ask that because I I would do trainings with emotional intelligence, and about trying to be authentic, just being able to share if there's things that are going on. And I found leaders felt that they didn't want to be seen as vulnerable.
So ready to make movement to work with me. I'm working with people who like 8, 9, tens on ready to make a change. And
Mm,
so what I haven't found is that people are afraid to be authentic or vulnerable. They don't know how, right? They
mm,
haven't seen it demonstrated or modeled through their leadership or through their community or through their family. And so they're just running the same script, right? The same program that they've been running
right.
since forever. And so it's a time when they take a pause and go, oh, and they really are like have an affinity for, oh, I really like that. Oh, I'm really good at that. Because being courageously authentic doesn't mean that you kicking down doors for everybody. It means you show up how you need to show up in the moment. Because then sometimes the moment is, buck if you nuck. And other times it's really like peaceful and reflective, right? It's not
Mhm.
one thing all the time. It's what the moment calls for. And it's so much easier to plug in and pause in the moment versus when they learned how, right? When they see the benefits, when they understand how it feels in their body, when they embody their full self with full self authority and full self acceptance. I have really, really seen some amazing results. So I
Mm,
wouldn't say hesitancy. I would say, hey, I don't know what it looks like. They're like, go in the dark room and be authentic and come out with something. Oh, that ain't the right thing. Go in there and try it again,
right,
right?
right. If you don't know what you don't know, you don't know
Hmm.
what you don't know. And like you said, if you haven't seen it, experienced it, then you're going to go by what you do know. And it and I so I like that. I like that. Like I said, I just found that the ones that I have encountered, some of them were fine with it, but the majority of them were like, I don't know, I don't want them to just see me, see that part of me. But
Well,
yeah.
and I think that each of us gets a different kind of client. And so I do when I do speak to authenticity in the workplace, I've had folks show up and like, I have been told I won't fit in. And I was like, fit in? If that's your goal, then let's talk about that. If something else is your goal, let's talk about that too. And
Mm-hmm.
so I do often after I teach authenticity in the workplace, I'm like, it's not safe. I didn't say it was safe.
Mm-hmm.
Authenticity doesn't take into doesn't eliminate the need for safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody doesn't earn access
Right.
to who you are in that way. So I don't tell you who I am. I tell you what I do and what you can call me. But who I am is beyond comprehension.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Tell it. So I know that one of the things that you also use is positive intelligence. Tell us
Mhm.
about that.
I really liked positive intelligence. And you see, like under my byline, exhale, inhale, transform. It is my motto for my company. Let go of the things that are no longer serving you. And so the saboteur is like a tricky kind of title because
Mm-hmm.
archetypally, there's not a wrong or a good or a bad. It just is, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so using positive intelligence, you learn that you're overusing your strengths, right? So it might be you're hyper rational, which means you are so focused on technical data, facts, that you completely ignore emotional data. But when you learn how to read emotional data, starting with your own, moving into
Mm-hmm.
your families and your communities and your teams,
Right.
oh, that is all about a superpower,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I
Mm-hmm.
really love the guardian of your power of choice. How do I choose to show up in this moment? What do
Mm-hmm.
I need to show up in this moment? And I like to think of a client I was teaching, and she was working on being honest and vulnerable with with a supervisor. And I'm like, well, what do you need? What level of vulnerability do you need to have that conversation? And she's like, probably an 8. And then I said, where are you? And they're like, a 4. I said, well, let's try it at a 4. And we went through for a couple of minutes, and she's like, hold on, stop recording, and just knocked it out the park, right? Because you don't have, it's like when you learn how to drive, there's that unconscious incompetence. You don't even know you don't know how to drive because,
Right.
all kids, we sit on the car and, boom, 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 thinking
Uh-huh.
we doing something, right? But then
Right.
you
Right.
learn what you don't know when you go to class and they
Mm-hmm.
tell you how to drive, and you was like, oh, that look a little intense. Hold on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then when you actually start not even thinking about it. Blinker, all these things are automatic. And so practicing authenticity, practicing vulnerability, practicing leveraging your power of choice is what we do in a safe space, in a safe container of a coaching environment. And so they get to
Mhm.
explore the things that they don't do well, because nobody wants to hear about what they don't do well, because we as a culture value competence, right?
Right,
And
right.
performance and productivity, and you're not as productive when you're just learning how to do something. I mean,
Mhm.
if the quality and quantity are the measuring sticks. And so I really love that, when you get handles on the things that don't work well for you,
Mhm.
okay. And then I shifted over into Clifton Strengths, which is like these are your natural talents and gifts. And there's like a crosswalk that I have with a lot of clients on your strengths lining up and your positive intelligence accomplice saboteurs at work. And it helps people to see these things as useful in a certain light, but also like overusing them. If you always
Mhm.
at Lowe's getting stuff, your unit price is high.
Yeah, I went through the training as a participant, I guess,
Mhm,
for the positive intelligence. I found it very impactful.
mhm.
And like when you look at those saboteurs and how they affect you, it was like, oh my gosh, it's like, it was almost like paralyzing. It's
Girl,
like,
just the pictures alone.
yes,
Just the pictures alone. Restless doing all
yes,
the things. Oh,
yes. And then you have what, like 10 saboteurs and
9.
only like
Mhm.
five sage. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's like, why are there so, think about it, I used to be like, why are there so many saboteurs versus the number of sage?
Well, I think it ties into like those 3 motivations: acceptance, I say interdependence, but they say independence, and security. And so I feel like when you break it down into those core motivations, there's only a couple things that actually, there's a lot of overlap there. How you show
Mhm.
up to get attention or acceptance externally or internally really overlaps with, that sage gift of, in the final analysis, right? On your deathbed, are
Right.
you going to remember this thing? Hmm.
Mm.
Or what do I want to remember about this thing, this moment in time? And it makes you like take off this false hat of urgency, right? This false sense of
Mhm.
urgency, and we're excellent at all costs. And wait, 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 wait. Let's talk about what excellence means. Is it,
Right.
part of a toxic workplace culture, excellence? Like we want 100%, but we only trying to pay for 45%.
Right.
Or is it
No.
doing naturally, using my strengths and my talents naturally and repeatably for excellence? Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those both land a little bit differently.
Yes, yes. And so that all depends on the culture, right? Of that environment that we're in. You can have a culture that is very supportive of you to,
Mhm.
use your talents and to, to best advance the mission and vision. But then there are those that's like,
Mhm.
this is how we gotta get the work done. And
Mhm.
I'm sorry you have to talk to Johnny over there. He not producing, or or whatever,
Well,
and
even
write
that,
them
like
up. Write them up. I used to. I had when I was a supervisor, uh, I had issues, and I was just advised, call employee relations, call to employee
mhm,
relations. And then when I
mhm.
got out of that space, and then started really analyzing my part first,
Girl, that right there.
my
That
part
right there.
first, I was like, was I the best supervisor in
Mhm.
that time? Was I emulating someone else
What you've
because I
seen
didn't know?
before. Yeah.
So when I started analyzing myself, then I knew, what I would do. Because once I left that position, I was like, I never ever want to be a supervisor again. Never ever. But then, I was like, no, maybe I would be a supervisor again, because I know there are tools and resources different than what I was told that I could utilize.
Well,
And
accountability is a two-way street, right? It's not just you
mhm,
give accountability to somebody, it's you're accountable for them as
right,
well. And so
right,
when you don't get it right, are you willing to take the same um heat, for lack of a better word, as
Mm-hmm.
your employees, as you're willing to dish out. If it, you know, but they say can't stand the heat, get out the kitchen. You
Yeah.
know,
And I was ready to get out the kitchen, move out the house. I was ready to do all that
you was
in
doing, and so
during
like
that time.
from a Oregon seat Clifton Strengths or Gallup Strengths perspective, that's like that first step in leadership is building that curiosity. You know, curiosity and
Mhm.
leadership, it turns tension into information. And so when you start going, okay, if every sentence, sometimes I substitute teach because I just love teaching and being in the front of the room. So I teach
Oh
adults, I'm a
yeah,
trainer,
good.
then also I've been subbing, and I love to go into the front of the room and go, look, this is what responsibility means to me. What does it mean to you? What do you hear me saying? Right. So there's this
Mhm.
back and forth. And then one day I was teaching Spanish and the kids were like, native speakers were like, you ain't say that right. And I was like, oh, thank you. And I always, even in a professional setting or in an adult setting, it's like, hey, if I say your name wrong, please correct me because it's really
Mhm.
important for
Mhm.
me to call you by your right name. And I am not perfect. And it
Right.
demonstrates for the class that we're going to make some mistakes. And so just get on out there and try something, throw something up on the wall and see what it sticks. Because once you're okay, not having to be perfect, you make room and space to learn more.
Mhm. Yes, yes, definitely, definitely. So I want to move now to your part of, with inclusion. You,
Mhm,
that's part of your
mhm,
program, and I'm wondering, like in this time and space, inclusion is almost a dirty word. So how do you still have that being able to work with your clients to um, to make sure that they can move forward and understand what inclusion is for them.
Well, for me, I've always leaned into belonging,
Mhm.
and I've always loved working with people who wanna work with me, and so
Right.
what this is doing is clearing out people who are delivering diversity, equity, inclusion, and JEDI work as lip service,
Mm.
right? And so
Mm.
when people say, "Hey, I wanna promote belonging," I'm genuinely curious about how to improve engagement and employee retention. I don't have any problem. They're not afraid of the word inclusion. They're not afraid of the work it takes to build a sustainable framework to make organizational change, to shift the culture, to shift the demographics or the data, right? And they're making
Mhm.
database decisions.
Mm. Mm. So, do you find that you just naturally flow that into your discussions with your clients? Is it all part of it, or do you have? I guess when your clients come to you, they already know that this is going to be part of the conversation and the sessions that you hold.
Well, I'm also certified in inclusion through
Mhm.
leadership leading Transformation Edge organization. And so part of that work is understanding who you are, right?
Mhm.
What you're here to do, but what tools and natural talents you have available. So how do you look at your identity, who you are? When have you ever been the only person? When have you ever been, if we look at our identity through the lens of financial, social, economic, um, physical abilities, sexual orientation, all those things, there are going to be places and spaces where we are not a part of the global majority.
Mhm.
And if you can tap into that um, in a very authentic and real way, you do make organizational change. And so I've always been like side eyeing, hey, you're responsible for this chief. Like a lot of CDOs, chief diversity officers have been let go, but they got the job and they had no budget. What you want me to do for free 99 don't get you what you need, or I'm out of the line
Right.
of authority. I'm not tied to budget. I'm not tied to resources. The grass is greener where you water it, and if you ain't gave me you ain't turned the water on, what you want me to do with this grass?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, it sounds like your clients come to you. They already understand what's the program.
And
What.
I make it approachable, right? Because even when I
Mhm.
get the status quo client, I'm not like here to call you out. I'm not in that cancel culture. I'm here to build a bridge. So help me understand. I'm genuinely curious. What you mean by that? I mean, I'm always maybe somebody might call me slick, right? That my mouth a little slick, but I'm always going to challenge the things that I don't understand the basis of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, as a young employee, this older guy was walking around like, "What you doing, youngin? What you doing, youngin? You're not working hard or hardly working." "I'm working hard as you." And he stopped and looked. He said, "What you mean by that?" I said, "What you mean by that?"
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and he was like, I just like give you something to think about. I'm not interested in changing your mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want you to be thoughtful around the impact you have on the rest of humanity. And we
Right.
don't always get it right. And how do we repair the relationship by acknowledging what part of us is a part of this society or this employee, supervisor, community member segment of community is reflective of.
Mm-hmm. We've been going on for at least 30 minutes, and I have yet to say that this conversation is not just between Erica and I. We want to hear from you. What thoughts, what questions do you have for Erica when it comes to um, our topic, which really is precision and purpose, aligning your mission with
Mhm,
clarity and impact. And Erica has
mhm,
been sharing how she's been working with her clients to do just that.
mhm.
So make sure that you are typing into the chat, leaving your comments, and sharing, asking questions because we have, I know she and I can have some great conversation, but we
Yes.
want to include you in this as well. So, Erica, I am curious to learn more about what else you do because I know you are a podcaster. And
Yes.
so, share with us about your radio show.
This is where my 97 percentile in leadership circle profile, courageous authenticity, shows up for me. And so I did an interview for a fellow peer of mine in the coaching community, and it was a at a black nonprofit radio station. And I was like, "Oh, that's a thing." And so I was there like to
Mm,
get some advertising. So I flew out there and I should have known some good stuff was happening because I got there at like 8 o'clock in the morning. And check-in is not until like 3, 4 o'clock, maybe 1, 2 o'clock if you ask for early checkout. But I
yeah,
showed up
yeah.
at all of good 8:32 and was like, I know it's kind of early. However, if there's any rooms available, could I check in early? I was willing to hear no. Girl, why did I get the penthouse?
What? The
Penthouse. I said, "Oh," the guy was like, "Yeah, this is my last day. Here you go." And his supervisor was standing right there, and I was like, "Is he serious?"
Not it was his last day. He didn't care about nothing after that.
Didn't care about nothing. And so, a friend of mine from college, she came up and we went to the interview together and came back and went to dinner and had a good time. And so in the interview, they were like, "Hey, we have some openings for some radio shows if you are interested." And I was like, "Well, I'll interview for it." And in the interview, the producer was kind of misogynistic. And it's hard for me to listen to that. So I kept challenging his thoughts and we were going back and forth a little bit. I mean, not really going back and forth, but when he said something, I would ask a question. He's like, my daughter just had a kid. One of the ladies in the interview for me was also a natural childbirth educator and a doula. And he
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Well, why do you think natural childbirth is not traumatic like a hospital birth?" And she was like, "Well, the data says da 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 da." And he was like, "Well, if you see all that blood on the floor like I did when my daughter, gave birth." And I was like, "Oh, it sounds like it was traumatic for you. Oh, I'm sorry you had that experience."
Mm-hmm.
However, some people have their expectations, aligned a little bit better. And then every birth is different, right?
Right.
So I kind of got on that. And then another young guy that was in the interview was getting out of the military and he was in school. And the guy was like, "Oh, you had to go run around and were you too old to still be in school?" He was like, "No, I was in the military and now I'm using my..." Right. Like I'm looking at him too like, you got a lot of opinions for
What?
somebody. No, you just met these people. And so I was like, "Oh." Well, sir, if he decided to run around and act a fool before he decided to go back to school, I'm
Mhm.
thankful he's back in school. I'm
Right.
thankful he's got some orientation towards investing in himself in whatever way he feels, valid. And the guy kind of looked at me. He was like, you always got something to say. So not all the time. And then we kept, along those same lines, having this engagement where I felt like maybe like I needed to protect them, but also like, what you about? And don't hire me thinking that I'm gonna be something you're not. You will find I am not a good token, right? I'm not gonna sit by and watch stuff go. I do miss stuff. I'm not saying I'm out here like a hawk on, sweating people like
Right.
that. But hmm. So I got to the airport and my flight was super delayed and all this good stuff. And I was telling my mom about it. And she was like, "You ain't want that job, did you?" I said, "I did. I absolutely wanted to, have an international platform.
Mhm.
However, I want them to know what they're getting,
Right.
right?"
Mhm.
And they called me. I was like, "Hey, you start Tuesday." Who, me? Because I really was like, man, yeah, you probably went a little too hard in the paint there, Miss Davis. And so coming up on 2 years as the host of Validity with Erika on WDRBmedia.com radio show. And working with some support staff to turn it into like a podcast and to, get the clips out and to, do some of those kinds of things with all this data that I have and how I break it up into stories and, pearls of wisdom, right? Or just bringing awareness into the lives of folks who oftentimes are not considered, right? It's like,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've so far just listened to my to my episode, but just knowing how welcoming you were and just flowed with it, I know that every episode is dynamic, and we want our listeners to be able to go to your website. I know you can go to your website, and there's a link that'll take them directly to your radio show, and
Mhm.
then they'll be able to listen to the various episodes that you've had over the past 2 years.
And yours was Royal Security, right? It was based
What?
on, right, that your company brand is,
Yes.
Royalty Business Group, but also you started your career, federal career as a security guard, and then you ended up in, HR and
Mm-hmm.
benefits. And so
Mm-hmm.
how do we leverage what we have to bring that and contribute that to communities and organizations that need us? And
Exactly.
so I really, really enjoy sometimes I forget I'm interviewing people. I'll be like, "Oh, really?" Then I'm like, "Oh, you got to ask the question." And I don't have a whole lot of questions written up because that sounds too much like right. But what I do is follow, be very spirit led and be very
Mm-hmm.
intuitive around,
Mm-hmm.
what's curious for me and asking that question and cracking jokes and, just talking about heavy stuff, but also making it accessible and encouraging people to think differently, feel deeply, and move purposefully. That's what
Yes.
we try to do on Validity
Yes.
with Erica.
And that you said that because you mentioned at the beginning about your architectural engineer,
Mm-hmm.
and you too are a former federal employee.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how does that all play into how you are building your business and working with your clients? I know I stacked questions, which I wasn't supposed to do, but
According to who? This your show.
yeah. So tell us here how does that help? How did that help you when you were starting to go out on your own and build your business?
Well, at the great Big Blue Tennessee State University, my alma mater, they teach you that you know everything and everybody is basically a peon working underneath you as an engineer, right? But I found architectural engineering because it dabbled in all the other modalities and disciplines of engineering. That's still how I show up as a coach today. I've got ORSC, I've got positive intelligence, I'm leaning into career coaching and leaning into transition, facilitation and keynotes. And then, for me, it's pulling out, looking in the kitchen. If any of my friends will tell you that I am like a gourmet kitchen witch, right? Because I'm like, I started off, okay, everybody starts off with 2 boxes of all the flavors of hamburger helper, right? That's where you start. But now I'm like, what do I have in this kitchen? Throw this in here, throw that in there. The recipe calls for this. I ain't got none of that. What else I can do? And,
Mm.
creating things that taste really good. One of my brother-in-laws was like, you too skinny to be a good cook, but you sure are. I was,
What's your best dish? What's your best dish?
I don't make nothing nasty. What I'm gonna say, my kids, I like to cook international foods. My
Okay.
kids had this moment in time where they was like, I made for Lent, I made lamb stew. They were like, "This the best thing you ever made, Mama." And I was like, "Stew? I'm up here making scones from scratch because our daughter, she had all these allergies and all this kind of
Oh.
stuff." My best dish, I think I'm a dessert person.
Mm. Mm.
I've got a really good pound cake. I've got really good sweet potatoes, vegetables. Yeah, my friend be like, girl, what you making? I had some of this, I had some of that. I'm gonna make something out of almost nothing, or what I'll say is out of anything. So
Mhm.
I don't know. People ask me to make certain stuff, and so like for me, somebody has in the comments, what's the first step to finding clarity in a world that seems to be focused on destroying? Who is striving for a full and healthy life? And I would
Mm.
say that first step is recognizing, what did they say? The song, the world didn't give it, the world can't take it
Yeah.
away, right? And so how do we tune out the world? How do we take emotional breaks and sensory breaks? I love to just turn off all the stuff and just listen to my heart speak to me. And so
Mhm.
it really does take that pause. I go walking, I invest in self-care in a way that is to the benefit of my community, because I can give more if I've watered the plants and pruned them and trimmed them and you know um, fertilize them and all those kinds of things. And so the first step is
Right.
really being intentional about how you unplug to hear yourself think.
Mm.
That's what I would say to
Mm.
that. And so, from an architectural engineering perspective, it knows a little bit about engineering, civil, mechanical, electrical. I took thermodynamics, which I didn't even need to do because I just be doing hard stuff for no good reason. And, building bridges. My first job, they were like, my first job after graduation, I was like, so here's with the US Forest Service. Don't the trees kind of stand up on their own? What you need me to do? And they were like, "Oh, we've got all this infrastructure." So I went to architectural engineering because I was like, I don't want to do roads and bridges and water, wastewater. What was my first job?
Mm.
Roads and bridges and water, wastewater. I said, I see you. Okay, I see you.
Mhm.
And so from
Mhm.
there, you learn how to use what you have, right? You have a factor of safety, and then you also d- listen to the stakeholders. What do they need? What does the environment need? What do the users need? What does the organization need? And you start finding and stacking those things, and then you focus on that overlap, right? And then after you take care of the big bunch of overlap, then you can start, working out and a little bit further.
Okay, so I forgot the second question I asked you, but I do have another question based on what you said. So
Mm-hmm.
you were saying how, like, when you cook, you take what you have
Mm-hmm.
and then you make something. And so what I'm thinking about is how, as leaders, sometimes we have the things that we want in our team, and sometimes we don't. So when that leader is like, okay, how do I take what I have? Erica, I'm working with you so I can be the best leader I can be. How do I take what I have with the skills of my team and my leadership to make it the best that it can be with what I have?
So, what I would like to remind people, that leader is not a noun, it is a verb. So,
Mm.
do you know where you're trying to go? what do you have and how do you get there? So an example would be like, for me, learner, input, connectedness, input, woo are my top 5. In my bottom 5 is like context, which is like understanding history. And so on a team, for example, there's this guy who always be like, back in my day. And I was like, oh,
That's
what is,
me. That's me.
and I would be so livid. And so finally, I had to use what I had, which was learner and input, and go, hey, can you help? And winning others over, right?
Mhm.
Can you help me understand what you learned from that experience that would be helpful for us today? Right. So I didn't
Mhm.
have to all of a sudden love history, which I passed it just because I have a really great memory.
Right.
I learned from senior employees because I leveraged what I had, which was my natural curiosity and collection of data.
Mhm.
Achiever, which is I got to get some stuff done, and woo, winning others over, showing that I value these things that I just don't have.
Mhm. We just taking a brief break, but
Sorry,
so
the
so
little plague rats have gotten to me.
yeah, that changing of the weather. It was cold and then it gets warm, and so that's where people get sick when the weather changes so quickly. So that's how people get sick. So we understand. We
Thank
do
you. I
understand.
appreciate the grace. I was like, I cannot. Oh, I hope it'll be better, and I'm better than I was. Like before, I was like, oh.
Oh yeah, I'm
However,
glad. I'm so glad.
however,
So it sounds like when you are working with leaders, and there are those team members on there who are like, back in my day, like I said, that was me. The longer I was in the government,
yeah.
the more I'm like, let's say, we did what was wrong with the way we had it. But that's a good point. Like, explaining to those who are coming in, this is why this part was important,
Hmm.
or how can we still do the same thing and in this new way to come up with the same results or better results.
And it
You
takes
know.
being curious. I know this one lady talked about eelgrass forever and ever. And I was like, lady, and I was like, why is eelgrass important? So I did a little Google search. And I was like, it's eelgrass everywhere. And she's like, well, it's the only food for the manatees and they're threatened, endangered. Well, girl, you burying the lead. You talking about this eelgrass. I don't know why that's important. So now I understand how I can support you. Okay, what are the things that we're doing that have a positive and negative impact on you know, the eelgrass, thusly, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the manatees. Oh, okay. And it takes being curious and not assuming that you know everything. One of my earlier projects, I'm really great about listening to stakeholders and getting them what they need. And this one lady, she was just like not enjoying my charms as I would like. And I was like, oh, I gotta figure this out. Well, she threw out this word that we use a lot, cost effective. So in engineering, when you think about cost effective, you're like over the life cycle, the 20, 30, 40, 50 years that this building is going to be in use. How do you make decisions in design that will minimize the maintenance costs?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it meant to me. So I was like, hey, you got to do this, you got to do that. Da, 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 da. And she was like, no, I needed to be more cost effective. We kept going back and forth. And then finally I was like, well, what do you mean by cost effective? And she was like, oh, I want to get as much done as I can with the money I have this year. Okay, I can do that. Now I see why you're making the decisions that you're making, and I can get behind them. And I can even support them, not even just get behind them. I can get out in front of them and continue to, advocate for and present you options that align with your definition. That's why, doing values work, you really got to dig into that definition. What does that mean to you? One of my favorite questions is, what am I missing? And what you hear me saying?
Mm.
Because what I say and what I intend and how it lands with you, there's a little bit of air. It's a little bit of gap between here. Everybody used to play telephone.
Right.
So, by the time you started off with yellow bananas and now it's,
Green
social
tomatoes.
media, someone's, yeah, it's something else. So remembering that, like, it's not intentional. It just, there's some things lost in translation. It
Right.
doesn't mean ill intent. And when you reclaim those things that are lost in translation, you can show up more effectively and efficiently and aligned. And so when you talk about precision, you're talking about precision as a matter of just like what matters most. And the purpose is why it matters. And the impact is what changes when strengths in our relationships are aligned. And so
Mm.
we really, really, really want to think about that. Like, what matters most on your deathbed? You know, how is this thing going to show up for you? What's that 10% we agree with? Some of those, PQ kind of things, but are things that I have had in my repertoire without knowing or calling them the sage gifts for a really long time.
Yeah, you know what you had just said before. Like
Uh-huh.
I should have had that as part of the description for this episode. I love that. That was great. And so what I am hearing from you is like the leaders need to be curious. They should be curious about what what happened in the past, that and what is it that maybe those who are new, what is it that they want to gain, what are their goals, and then how that can be all put together in order for the team to advance, because otherwise things are just going to be going willy-nilly. But one thing I wanted to also say is that words matter, right?
Oh, they
So,
do.
so when you're being curious, and like you said, ask questions. When the guy said,
But you can't be
are you
fake
doing
with it. You
something?
can't be like, what an idiot. Oh, tell me
Right,
more. It's gonna come across. You have to really be like, what you
right,
mean by that? And be
yeah.
genuine. When you're genuinely curious and not fake
Hmm.
curious, right?
Hmm.
People are open and receptive. People want to help and be responsive. And if they can't, they'll just say that, let's figure it out, right? Like I remember
Hmm.
one leader I worked for, she loved to send you in a room to pull out something in the dark and they'd be like, nah, that ain't it. And you'd be like, you didn't tell me what it was. Go back in there and I got after we worked together for maybe 4 or 5 years, I got to be like, well, I'd love to see what you'd like to see differently. And she was like, oh, it's good enough. Oh, it's good enough. Right. Because she wasn't quite sure. And she just, the same tactics that a lot of the managers use when you got somebody that's busy and productive. And so they always worrying the hair off your butt to give you more work and to do something extra. Then you'd be like, look, I learned a lot from her in hindsight around
Hmm.
holding space and not pushing everything forward. I mean, I got so much work done that when I left that position, they took 3 people to fill behind me. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh, no wonder she wasn't trying to move out on everything I was pushing because I was pushing too many things, right? I was
Hmm.
out here doing the streets, doing all the good Black woman superhero stuff. So,
Right, right.
hmm,
And then what's coming down from her leadership, there
right.
may have been ambiguous,
Uh
and
huh.
so she wouldn't know what to look for because she wasn't told what to look for.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
so
You
all
know how
that.
people like, go ahead and do that thing. And you'd be like, ain't nobody doing that. Right. Anybody got time for that?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. We do not. We do
Mhm.
not. So tell us, what new and exciting things do you have coming up?
So, getting ready to celebrate 2 years as the host of Validity with Erica,
Hey.
working on some group coaching and some retreats this year because, how do we build sustainability? We'll have some virtual, but also some in-person retreats. So come and check us out. It's really important for me to continue to do my work. Like
Mhm.
a coach need a coach too, right? Doctors don't treat themselves; they go to the doctor, right? You go to
Right.
the specialist. And so, how do I continue to expand streams of income for myself and my family in partnership with my husband? How do we build more family-oriented um, not just programming, but business,
Hmm.
institutions and based and build reconnect the community because there's so much. Somebody said it in the chat around how there's so much focus on destroying stuff. Weapons formed against me will not prosper. I can literally say anybody who came for me lived to regret it, and I didn't have to lift a finger. Right?
Mm.
I don't
Hmm.
wish you harm because the impact of your behavior, words, whatever was less than optimal for me. I'm going to be thankful, right? And so like you asked in that earlier question about a team that you don't have what you need. You as a leader have to believe you have what you need. Now you need to figure out what you need to do with it. Now you might not have enough toothpicks to, build a ladder to the moon, but you can do what can you do with what you have?
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
that perspective, it translates into value in the organization and connection. When I talk to leaders who be like, oh, so and so ain't never gonna be right, they terrible. Well, they ain't terrible by themselves, they terrible because you letting them be that way.
Mm.
Right, you haven't made it an inviting invitation to change the behavior, you know
Right.
so an
Right.
enticing invitation, an inviting invitation.
I was going right along with what you were saying, but one thing that came to mind, and the things that I thought about in my own experience was that we are with people. No matter how much
Mhm,
we say we kind of leave stuff, at home and separate work from home, there does not that does not how we are. So in being a leader, we have to understand that too, because that a lot of times plays into what the employee's performance is. If there's chaos and confusion going on in the home, then you may not have a productive employee. And so
mhm,
being able to being curious could mean, you know, let's talk about, any issues. And if the supervisor, I'm thinking, is uncomfortable with doing that, then there are other avenues within the workplace that usually are there to help, employee assistance programs and things like that,
mhm,
that you could help that employee. So we have to keep that in mind as well.
mhm. Yeah, and a lot of employee assistance programs are understanding the value of coaching and offering that in addition to therapeutic
Mm.
modalities through their programs. And so I'm on contract with a couple of those as well to do that
Okay.
kind of work because, you know, um, leadership is a 360 thing. It's not like, oh, being a leader is just you talking down. It's you talking with your peers and providing
Mhm.
support. It's you
Right.
leading up sometimes and talking to your, upline managers around how do we show up and what do we need and what's really going on, you know. And do that in a way that we own that we're deciding, I'm not doing that today. We're not like, I know they're not going to be able to do it, but I'm going to have them do it anyway. So then if somebody say it, I told her to do it. Like that gotcha culture,
Right.
all it does is make a whole lot of more work, in my opinion, in my experience.
Well, if anyone wants to reach out to you, I know I've been putting it on the screen occasionally, but if you could just say how they can reach out to you, learn more about what you have coming up, how could they do that?
Send an email to info@exhalellc.com. Available through email. I'm also on most social media platforms, LinkedIn at Erica L. Davis PECPQC.
When they see that beautiful face, they'll know it's you.
That's right, right. Doublemint twins, and I'm also on Instagram as Exhale Consulting LLC. I'm on Validity with Erika on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. Also Facebook, Exhale Consulting LLC, one word. I'm on these streets doing the work that I'm called to do and want to activate you to change the things that you need to change in your family, in your life, in your community, in your organizations. When strengths are aimed at your system and your system is aligned, impact becomes repeatable. If you're ready to stop working hard in the wrong direction, that's what I do through Excel Consulting with keynotes, executive retreats, and strategic planning. They send me a message called Precision, and I'll send a simple alignment prop that you can use this week to figure out how to get some clarity in your life.
All right. I hope y'all heard that. I hope y'all heard that. So make sure that once you log off from this, once we finish,
When we
then you,
finish,
right, when we finish, not right
hmm
now, but when we
not right
finish,
now.
go to her social media platforms, go into YouTube, like and subscribe, and you'll be able to stay connected with her and learn about all the great and wonderful things that she's doing. And at some point, we're going to get together in person. Like, you know,
About that life. I'm about
we,
that
we,
life.
we're going to get together in person and we're going to have a
A good
bowl.
time.
Yes, yes, yes.
I
Cutting
cannot
up,
wait.
cutting up.
That's all I do. I'm here for a fun time, not a long time. I got that from my daughter when she was like in high school. She said that, and of course, I clutched my pearls. What you mean, fun time? What you mean, long time? What's all the fear spoke up. Now I'm saying it all the time. I'm here for a fun time, not a long time. Because why make it hard? There's a lot of
Mm,
things that we don't have a choice about being hard, and there's a lot of things we do have a choice with. So where I can activate, elevate, and lighten my own load, that's my responsibility to myself and to my family to do that. So here for a fun time, not a long time. Exhale, inhale, transform.
that's right. That's right. We're going to do all that. Do all that. Thank you so much, Erica, for being here. It has been, again, a pleasure to talk with you as always. You dropped a lot of nuggets, and I know people should be picking those up and getting in touch with you about all the great work that you're doing. And I can't wait to see you in person, or at least we're gonna have to get online and chat again
It's
and
gonna be
catch up.
fun.
Yep, yep. Even when it get warmer, I know it's getting warmer here in the DC area, so hopefully these mounds of snow will go away. It's not gonna go away till
Yeah.
summertime. That's how it always is. But
Keep
you
your
know,
wisdom
you
to
from
yourself,
Detroit.
but you are more than welcome to visit me in the Flow Rider.
I was gonna say, you know how it is with all that snow from being in Michigan.
Mm,
So,
Lord of mercy, Lord of mercy. Thank
all
you
right.
so
Well,
very
thank
much for having
everyone.
me. Thanks,
Oh,
everyone.
thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.